Hey guys, my name's Gloria and welcome back to my channel. First of all, I'd like to welcome the brand new subscribers that I've gotten in the last day and a half. I have jumped through my goal for the month and actually reached my goal for the entire year, the entire goal that I had for this channel when I started it on the 1st of January this year, so that's crazy. Not really sure what to do with that yet, but thank you so much for everyone who's subscribed, everyone who's liked and commented, everyone who's given any of their time to any of my videos. I'm assuming you're here because you like them, so I hope you continue liking them. For today's video, I want to, well, this was supposed to be like a huge big video, and then I thought maybe I'd break it up into parts instead. I wanted to go through some of the books that I've seen on my most frequented booktube channels, and I've put down as ones that I absolutely have to read and just didn't get to yet. So this was sort of a push to read those books that I've really been meaning to read and that I left a comment saying that I was going to read. So this is just to get through some of those. So the first channel that I picked, I think, is the first horror tube channel that I even subscribe to on YouTube, which is Alex's Hey Little Thrifter channel. And of course you cannot take a recommendation from Alex without first reading a Kathe Koja book. Her channel was the first place that I ever heard the name Kathe Koja, and I could be going out on a limb here, but I think Kathe Koja may be one of her favourite writers. Just maybe. So today I'm going to be looking at the Cipher from Kathe Koja and also Let's Go Play at the Atoms. So I watched these are a few months old, I think, from her channel. I think the Cipher one is a couple of years old, but there was something about these books whenever she was reviewing them, whenever she was talking about them, that made me really want to read them for some reason, even though I knew they would disturb me, but I guess that's why we're into horror. So first up, the first one I read was Cipher. This was out in 1991 and I think it's just being re-released by another publishing company, so you could possibly get a physical book if you wanted, but I did read it in ebook form. This is definitely unique. It's definitely weird. It's supposed to be weird. It's supposed to be kind of out there. So a brief synopsis is that you sort of jump in and there is a man called Nicholas and his friend Koja, and they already know about this strange phenomenon in Nicholas's apartment building. In one of the corridors, just in an empty storage room, there is a hole in the ground. They call it the fun hole. They call it the fun hole for many joke opportunities. But and I think the novel was actually supposed to be called The Fun Hole, but I'm sure it was more marketable as the Cipher. But they know this is here. They don't know what the hell it is. They don't know why it's there. It seems to be some sort of, it's not a hole in the physical world, in the physical building. It doesn't go anywhere. There's nothing on the corridor underneath. It's just a living black hole that they do sort of throw some things into, and they never hear anything. They never hear anything hit the ground. There seems to be a smell that emanates from it that changes, and they can tell just physically in their bodies that this is alien to them. It is bizarre, it's a weird phenomenon, and they are morbidly fascinated by it. Koja a lot more so than Nicholas. Nicholas is a lot more afraid of it, but he's in love with Koja, so he goes along with it, and Koja becomes more and more sort of adventurous with it. She puts down a couple of bugs and they come back warped and grotesque with extra limbs, and they're all messed up. They end up putting a video camera down, and the video that comes back is extremely frightening and bizarre, and it seems like everyone who watches it sees a different thing. except for Nicholas. Apparently people rewatch it because it keeps coming up different for them even though it's the same tape, but Nicholas always seems to see the same thing. And one day while they are messing about around this fun hole, Nicholas's hand accidentally slips into it and he develops a sore, almost a stigmata on his hand that begins to sort of eat away at his flesh and weep clear fluid, and everything just starts to go awry from there if it wasn't already awry. So the cipher, it's told completely from Nicholas's point of view. I would say it's written quite like a literary sort of novel. There's a lot of sort of fragmented sentences, and just the way his narrative goes is quite literary. It's not very, you know, standard commercial sort of writing and storytelling. There's a lot of characters that come in later, a lot of sort of artists and artsy characters, and they're pretty much made to hate. They're just horribly up themselves, pretentious people. But the main characters are Nakota and Nicholas. Nicholas is in love with Nakota. You don't know fully why, because she just seems horrible, but the actual story is grotesque and weird, and it escalates in stranger and stranger ways, and you're never really sure where it's going to go. And the last third of the book, the sort of ending of the book, is very bizarre as well. I really liked it. I really liked how it was written. It was definitely something different, definitely something sort of fresh for me, and it dealt with a very bizarre phenomenon that is, it's never fully explained, but I think if there was some sort of info dump explanation for it, it would have kind of ruined it. The hole's just kind of there, and it has a pull on people, some people more so than others, and it has strange phenomenon surrounding it. There are a few frightening imagery and frightening events that happen in it as well. It's weird, but it's very good, and for a debut novel as well, if this was Kathe Koja's first novel, what an achievement. I'm excited to read whatever else she has out there as well. So this one, from getting this recommendation from Alex's channel, was definitely a good one for me. I think she's definitely mentioned it a few times. I think that's why it got stuck in my head. And yeah, if you're looking for something weird, if you're looking for something not usual, something that doesn't have ghosts or monsters, but it's still ominous and dark and enthralling and really gripping, I definitely go for The Cipher by Kathe Koja. The next book that I read that I first saw on Alex's channel was Let's Go Play at the Adams. When I first saw the review of this, and I even saw the cover, I was like, nope, it's blacklisted, I don't want it, don't want anything to do with it, not my thing. But it seemed to take root in my head and just really get its claws in there. I think she's mentioned it in a few different compilation videos as well, and each time it comes up my brain kind of goes, maybe. One of the reasons I didn't want to watch it is just because, or read it, children freak me the hell out. If there are a lot of people who've asked me why I get so nervous around groups of children that I don't know, and why, you know, I'll tell them about a weird thing that happened where I was on a bus and there were like loads of kids around, and they think that's normal, and I'm like, I could have died. It's because of this book. It's because I remember from being a kid, I mean, I never tortured anyone, but kids have an innate ability from when they're born to manipulate their parents to get what they want and to have tantrums and stuff. and they sort of grow up with this, and they have it a long time before they have the ability and the experience to really recognize the consequences of their actions and to recognize the psychological damage that you can easily do to people as well. So just tying someone up for a few days might not seem like a big deal, but that has serious psychological trauma as well attached to it. But I should give a small synopsis of this first. So it is about a babysitter who has been asked to babysit these two young children for a week, Cindy and Bobby. I think they're like, Bobby's 10 and Cindy's 8, and their father's a doctor and their parents go off to Europe for a week. So she's taking care of the house, she has their car, and she drives them to church and whatnot. And there's a couple of other children that live in the area. It's quite rural, and there's a small river that breaks up their houses, but they come over as well, and she takes them swimming, and she sort of gets to know them a little bit, but on the second or third day of her being there, she wakes up spread eagle, tied and gagged to the bed, and rather than either of the children trying to help her out of this or even seeming in any way scared, they are delighted that their plan has worked, and they call the other children, which is a 17-year-old called Diane. There's also her 13-year-old brother Paul, and there is another 16-year-old boy called John. And these children are all children who grew up in this area, in this rural area, and they would play a lot outside. They call themselves the Freedom Five and have played some games in their time, some odd games where they pretended to be in guerrilla warfare and whatnot, and some were prisoners, some were jailers. Seems quite innocuous, but it turns out that they have just decided to play this game with Barbara, the babysitter, who is about 20 years old. So to them she's just sort of on the cusp of being a full-fledged adult, but she's still a little bit relatable. So the whole sort of premise of the book is that they have this hatred for adults. They have this hatred for how adults treat them, how adults expect them to behave, and they just kind of want to see what it's like to be the ones in charge of the adults. So initially it starts with just tying Barbara up and doing whatever they want, but they quickly realize that if they want to not get in trouble by the end of the week, or not get caught before the week ends, they are going to have to clean up after themselves. They're going to have to make sure the children, the two Adams children, look like they're being washed and fed properly, that groceries are coming to the house, and that things look normal. So immediately it's not the perfect rule-less situation that they were hoping for. There are rules that they all have to adhere to, and some of them don't like these rules, but they have to do it. And as well as that, they start to come up with their own rules. They very quickly become bored with just eating ice cream and going out swimming when they feel like it, and they start to come up with their own rules of ways that they can sort of test the limits and test the boundaries of what they can do to Barbara. And as you can imagine, this goes downhill pretty steeply and pretty quickly, and this is a genuine fear of mine that children are just going to turn on you, and they're not even necessarily evil kids, they're not even necessarily bad kids, they just don't know what it's actually going to do to them. It just freaks me out. It reminds me of an actual true crime story that literally happened, and it's horrific. I'll link the Wikipedia article down below. I can't remember the name, but it was a small section of a neighbourhood that did the same thing to a young girl that was just absolutely horrific. And it also reminds me of a short story that I actually wrote. The first reading that I did in this channel for this October is about a babysitter who has some issues with a boy and a girl that she's babysitting. So I'll link that down below as well if you want to watch it or read it from my blog. But as you can see, it's a genuine fear of mine. I think kids are so capable of doing these kinds of things without thinking about it, because they're not thinking about the consequences. They're not thinking about how it's going to affect the person and how it's going to affect them as well. And a lot of the times they just don't think of the real world consequences, and they think they'll just get put in timeout or something. But when it's something like this, it's a lot more serious. So it's Let's Go Play at the Atoms is not an easy read. It's definitely not a fun, relaxing horror novel. But it's really well written. It's told from multiple perspectives. It kind of jumps little bits into all the children's perspectives, and spends a lot of time with Barbara herself and her trying to figure out what's going on, what is going to be the end result of this, how can she sort of play in the emotions of the children, if she even can, to try and get a little bit of freedom. There's a great undercurrent of freedom in this, of Barbara suddenly losing freedom, of trying to get little bits of freedom back, of the kids having this freedom to do whatever they want, and then realizing it's not as great as they thought it was going to be, because there's still rules, there's still responsibilities, there's still things that they have to do that they don't want to do. So obviously things to escalate with the children, and they try more and more things. They sort of bring to the fore the darkest things in their minds, and surprisingly or unsurprisingly, there are quite a few dark things in these kids' minds, and they now have the freedom to do them, and they have the freedom to not be judged by the other kids as well. And it is numerous times the kids sort of say to Barbara, when she pleads with them to let her go, what's the harm that we're doing? Because they think they've each in their games sort of at one point or another tied each other up, so they know what it's like to be tied up, and they think, what's the big deal? We were tied up too. But they weren't tied up for multiple days, untied, retied, dragged around. They weren't starved and tortured in the ways that Barbara was, and just the fact that she can't communicate that to them, that they can't see that, it was a little bit frustrating, because she's quite strong, she's quite intelligent, but she can't seem to, I don't know, I feel like if she had started bawling, if she really started crying and really started acting terrified, maybe that would have caught on to some emotion in at least one of the kids. But she didn't do that. She tried to stay calm and to kind of talk her way out of it, use her teaching skills, she was in college to try and be a teacher, to try and figure out these kids. But unfortunately, once you hit a certain adult status, you forget what it was like to be a kid, I think, and that can lead to some dangerous situations. A little bit of this Barbara's sort of part did sort of remind me of Gerald's Game by Stephen King. Almost immediately she starts imagining the voice of her friend Terry, her college roommate, who is quite an intelligent person and she's a more straightforward person, whereas Barbara wants to see the good in everyone and sort of puts people in little boxes. Terry is a lot more encompassing of all of the good and bad of someone, so she tries to imagine what Terry would do, what advice Terry would give her, and even starts to see Terry in the room with her, which did kind of remind me of Gerald's Game, and how in Gerald's Game she sees her old friend as well, who's a lot more straight talking to try and give her advice and things. So that was just something I was thinking while I was reading it. It's really flippin' disturbing. It's really messed up. You kind of think, oh well, this kid is gonna object to this, no, or this kid is gonna, they're old enough to know that this is really bad, and it's like, no, they've all decided, and they're definitely kids that stick to their guns. And yeah, it just it's messed up. It's really messed up. If you want to know why I'm afraid of kids, or why kids are so scary, or can be so scary, you should definitely read Let's Go Play at the Atom. So if you're a person with multiple children of different ages, you might start looking at them a little bit differently when you read this. I have a cousin who has 5 children. If they all wanted to, if they all decided to turn on them, I think the kids would win. I honestly do. I am very glad that I stepped outside my comfort zone and I read these books, and I didn't just stick to my blacklist of certain books. I have read a few more from my other most frequented booktube channels as well, and I'd like to continue this. So I will be doing a couple more of these videos, and even in the months and possibly years to come, I will be picking a couple of books from almost all the channels that I watch. I'm always, whenever I watch videos, I'm always putting stuff on my TBR list and on my Goodreads TBR as well, so I shall be getting through a lot of books that I would not have heard of otherwise. So thank you to everyone who's out there recommending me these great books. Thank you again to my recent and my original subscribers as well. I really appreciate it. It's really a great motivation to keep doing things. I shall be back tomorrow with another video, and I shall see you then.